From the nation's capital, this is the Fly Fishing Consultant Podcast with your host, Rob Snowhite.
This is the 231st episode of the Fly Fishing Consultant Podcast. My name is Rob Snowhite, and this is the last of my series of podcasts from the United Kingdom. My wife had a business trip to London, and I joined her while she was at business meetings all day. I got to walk around and have fun and explore the city. And while we were planning the trip, there was one night I was on Instagram, and I noticed the London Fly Fishing Fair page said, "Come to the show March 22nd to 23rd. I was like, my goodness, I'm going to be there. So I emailed Fergus and arranged to go and found out all about it. And let's talk about my trip to London leading up to, or culminating at, the fly fishing show. Sunday, we landed early morning. We walked around, got our bearings. We walked through Hyde Park and immediately noticed most, if not all, the dogs were off their leashes. There were geese, there were swans, there were little herons, there were ducks, there were pigeons. These dogs did not even look at them. I don't understand how well behaved these dogs were. Apparently a lot of those birds belong to the queen, and if your dog goes after them, your dog dies. I don't know if the dogs know that, but I've never seen anything like it. Dogs off the leash, they'd walk ahead 50, 60 feet, sniff a tree, walk past a swan, and go back to their owner, walk around them, and then go off in another direction. And we were dumbfounded by this. We ended up at Dishoom in London, in Soho, for lunch. So Dishoom, D-I-S-H-O-O-M. And I grew up in Northern Virginia. It's a pretty international city and suburbs area. And I thought I knew good Indian food. I mean, I've grown up eating Indian food in restaurants and at home my entire life. Dishoom convinced me that what I've been eating here in America for my entire life is a complete sham. That food was so damn good. The lentils, the chicken, the fresh garlic naan, the chutneys to put on everything were, I can't describe to you how amazing it was, and I'm trying to recreate them. And I talked with Misty Dillon a bit at the last beer tie about Murg Malai, which is the marinating in cream overnight. Oh my God, it was so good. So we need to do a trip back to Dishoom. And then we stopped at a small pub in Soho, had our first pint of Guinness, sat with some locals, and then headed back to the hotel. Monday was my day to go to the Natural History Museum. Now, I spent most of Sunday walking around, so I had my bearings using Google Earth, Google Maps, and I wanted to go to the Natural History Museum. There's a couple of things that have been on my bucket list for most of my life. That would be going to the Natural History Museum there, seeing Darwin's collections, and also seeing Darwin and Newton's graves at Westminster Abbey. So I walked 2.5 miles to the Natural History Museum through Hyde Park. I noticed there's a leather suitcase wedged under a bush, and I waved down some officers or soldiers, I don't know what you call them, on horseback. And, you know, if you see something, say something. I said, yeah, there's a leather bag sitting under a bush over there in a populated area of the park. And their response was, we'll get to it, which surprised me. I also saw armored soldiers on horses in the park, just things you don't see here in America, ever. So the walk was fun. It was a little sweaty and hot getting there. The museum is from the 1870s. And I walked around, and it's a pretty amazing building. It's built like a cathedral. And I asked where Darwin stuff was, so I'm directed upstairs, and there's this tiny little room, and you walk in, and the first thing you see is a great auk. And you're going to have to look that up. And, of course, my excitement starts to just go nuts. I'm seeing things you never thought as a biologist or a science nerd you'd ever see. So I take a picture of that. It turns out it was out of focus. I didn't realize till afterwards. And I'm making my way around, and they have an Archaeopteryx fossil, much smaller than I thought it would be. And then I get to Alfred Russel Wallace's butterflies, and that kind of stopped me in my tracks. These are the two guys in there, Darwin and Wallace. If you read The Feather Thief, you've got more of an introduction to them than you'll get in most other places. But some of the premier entomological and organismal specimen collections from the Gilded Age of the British naturalist. And to see those butterflies that he collected in the Malay Archipelago was... I tried getting a hold of my professors in college to let them know that I'd finally seen it. And then you go around a little bit more, and there's Darwin's pigeon collections. He didn't just collect birds in the Galapagos. He was obsessed with pigeons and earthworms and other things. And he's the first person ever to put wheels on an office chair. So right now, I can thank him because I'm sliding around on my office chair. So that was pretty cool. And I said, where's the rest of the stuff? I thought I'd see some really cool things. And they said, you got to go on a private tour. It's 15 pounds. You go in the basement. So I get down into the basement at this tour. And most of the museum, I've worked at museums in D.C., so I've seen the dinosaurs and rocks and other things. They're interesting, but I had my priorities. So I get down there, and we start seeing the stacks. And then we go into the specimen room. And everyone there else was just there because they saw it on a TV show. I nearly pooped my pants. You walk in, and there are 4 coelacanths in alcohol. There's a 5-foot-long Komodo dragon preserved in alcohol. It's crystal clear. It looked like a dinosaur. Then they have an Architeuthis, which is the giant squid, in a 40-foot-long custom-made glass tank. And I'm sitting there like, what the hell, man? I'm seeing all this stuff. Like, there are sharks and rays and skates and snakes and jars and jugs of preserved moles and mice and lizards. And the people around me are like, okay, that's fine. And I'm like, what is all this? And then we go over to this last specimen shelf, and there's a bunch of jars with yellow caps on them. And the guy says, look closely at the labels. And it says, these were collected on the HMS Beagle by Charles Darwin. And it's his signature on his specimen collections. And these are the holotype specimens. They have yellow caps on the jars. Well, holotype is the key defined individual of that organism for scientific nomenclature. So these are the actual specimens that he collected, were the first to be described, and all others captured or studied will always be based on that specific organism in that jar. And I'm just, like, the hair on my arm standing up just talking about that. For me to see that was an absolute honor. And I just stood there for a couple minutes reading them all, taking pictures, looking at them. They also had a 4-foot-long Australian earthworm. And I knew what all this stuff was, but the people didn't. So I think I surprised our tour guide a little bit more, knowing what we were looking at, as opposed to most people he sees. So I left the museum, and I walked back to the hotel. But first, I stopped at the Pret a Manger, which is just walk up and take something, buy it, and eat it and go. That was the go-to sort of breakfast and just quick meal if you needed to grab something without sitting down. So I got a sandwich, and then I walked over to Farlow's to check out the fly shop there. Nobody there was available to do a podcast, but I got to walk around and see a bunch of the gear, the difference in flies, how much simpler they are. You don't have Streamer Bros over there putting 50 ingredients and 10 articulations in with extra garnish, which... their flies look like things fish eat, and they catch fish. But there's a different style of fishing there, which we learned about from Andy. I walked around there, and they told me to go grab a pint of Guinness at the Red Lion. So I went up there, and I had a cider first to quench my thirst, and then I had a Guinness, which I had to let warm up while I was drinking my cider because their Guinness is exceptionally cold. And that pint of Guinness was exceptional. It was creamy. It had nice thick foam on it. It was pitch black. It was delicious. And then I headed back to the hotel, showered and cleaned up because I'd done about 4 miles of walking. And then we went off to the Anchor and Hope pub for traditional English fare. On Tuesday, I decided I was going to go to the Globe Theater. If I had honored my biology professors, I'm going to go honor my AP English teacher. So I did the walk across the river, all through Parliament. I stopped at Westminster Abbey, which you had to pay to see inside. I wanted to see Darwin and Newton, but I didn't want to spend like 80 US. And there was a lot of protests for Brexit going on. Went across the river, got to the Globe. It's pretty cool. It's right on the river. But I also wanted to see where they used to get drunk and wrestle bears. So I asked about that, and they said, yeah, the Bear Gardens is about 2 blocks to the right. And I went down there, and it's just an alleyway with a sign. It's all been built up before. But people used to get drunk and either them or their dogs would wrestle bears while they're waiting for stuff to start at the Globe. And I walked back across the bridge. I decided I was going to walk to Twinings. And of course, with New York City and now London, I want to go to historic pubs. So I found a pub and I decided to walk towards it to go get a drink. Figure a beer in the afternoon would just quench me, and you can't find ice water anymore. So what else are you going to drink? So as I'm walking, I go up an alley to look for the Old Cheshire Cheese Pub. And my nose takes me to this falafel shop called Pilpel, Pilpel. And it was awesome. So I got a falafel, hung out, cooled down after walking for 3 hours, and then started back up, found the pub, and it's an old bank dating from the last century or century before that, 1800s, turned into a pub, and the bartenders just don't want to talk to you. They pour and they walk away. So I sat down, had a pint of Guinness, read the newspaper. It's where I found out about a racing pigeon that was being sold for 1.2 million euros, which is fascinating. I always looked for the most interesting news headline of the day. After I left that pub, I went down the street and walked into Twinings, sampled a bunch of tea. I'm a tea drinker, not a coffee drinker. And I came home with 3 bags of different teas. And we just had the apple elderflower tea here over the weekend. It was amazing. And then I was walking some more and I figured, you know what? I'm getting tired and I'm thirsty. So I stopped into another pub, which was an old bank. This is really where I realized that bartenders want nothing to do with you there. They pour your drink and they walk away from you. And I noticed all the crazy gins. So I had some discussions with a bartender cleaning glasses who was sort of stuck there. And he ended up having to talk to me instead of ignoring me. So then we went back to the hotel, cleaned up. We went to Hoppers, which is a Sri Lankan restaurant. Now we are making Sri Lankan Hoppers at home, which is a rice flour and coconut milk based crepe. And you make it in a pan. And you can find the recipe at lavenderandlavage.com. I finally bought Karen's book, so I got tired of looking all the recipes online. Wednesday, as you know, I stopped at Pret for a sandwich, got on the train. Forgot to mention a girl on the train ate an entire loaf of brioche bread. If you want to see the pictures, I can upload it. I'll blink out her face. So I watched her for a good 40 minutes eat an actual loaf of bread. And then return from Oxford, we go to the Market Hall food court by Victoria Station and get kebabs and fries, which were fantastic. And then we went back to the Red Line where we met up with a Bernie's Mountain Dog in the pub walking around that's allowed to order its own bags of crisps, specifically cheese and onion. And we had the greatest conversation of all time with the dog's owner. Now, the guy was either completely full of BS or the greatest story of all time. He was dressed exceptionally well, but his fingernails were filthy. And his stories were things you can't really make up if you're just a BS artist. You got to experience things. And he was telling us political, economical, crazy stories, but the math he came back to, and he was very inebriated, was always correct. And he said some things that most people wouldn't know. Specifically, when my wife had come back from the loo and sat down and was just hanging out and talking, and the man says, well, you know, my wife took all that money in the divorce. I mean, you're Russian, you know. And my wife had never said anything, and the dude picked out that she was Russian just from her sitting down. And I was dumbfounded the rest of the night. So, Dave, if you're out there listening, I want to find out if that was all true or not. It was one of the craziest nights of drinking in a pub. I thought we were on hidden cameras, honestly, that he was taking the piss, and it was all a huge joke on us. But I've never seen a dog in a bar that can order its own chips. Thursday, I went to the Grant Museum of Zoology, which was uptown from London, a good hour-and-a-half walk. So I slowly walked through Soho, stopping to look at different scotches. I found my neighbor's favorite, which is Royal Lochnagar, but we just didn't have room in our luggage to bring a fifth back. And I asked them where their favorite pub was so I could get a pint on my way up to the museum. I was in no rush, and they sent me to the Toucan, which had about 6 or 7 seats, and it was just a hole in the wall as best you could describe it. It was about the size of a dumpster carved into the street, and you just hop in, and the bartender poured us drinks and walked off. But I ended up talking to a couple from, it was Hungary or Czech Republic, or maybe Poland. I can't remember now. But I had my delicious, lovely pint and then went up to the Grant Museum of Zoology, which is free. And I walked around with the coolest things in there was a pickled thylacine or the Tasmanian tiger skin. and a thylacine skeleton. I did have to correct them on one of their displays of fishes that was mislabeled. It's a good thing the wife wasn't there because she would have gotten pissed. She does not like when I correct people with their scientific things. It was labeled some kind of catfish, and it was definitely some kind of a locid. It was not a catfish. So then I decided to walk back, and I bumped into a restaurant that sold salt beef. And I just said, what is salt beef? And I walk in. They said, it's like your brisket, but it's steamed. And they cut me a slice, and it was like the most tender brisket I've ever had. I said, all right, give me a sandwich. So I had salt beef on British rye with spicy mustard and pickles. And I just ate that while I walked. And then I decided I wasn't hungry anymore, but I still needed to try some food in Soho. So I went into Poppy's and got a meat pie and mushy peas and no ice water. The only thing I wanted really at that point was ice water. And I'm so full now. And I've been commenting to people all week about how weak the beer was. So I was sent to a spot near the Red Lion that had beer that was a little higher in ABV. So with my full belly, I walked down there and I met a guy outside I had a drink with who looked exactly like Eric Clapton. I had to ask him his name. He's like, my name's Chris. I was like, dude, I thought you were Eric Clapton. He said, well, he's older. He's got more money. So I ended up having a nice drink there. You can't find a 7 or 8% IPA anywhere. It's all 4.2%. So I had that, and I figured, all right, I'm going to go have my last beer at the Red Lion. It's now about 4 o'clock, and I've been walking since 9 in the morning. And I'm so full at this point, I could barely finish my Guinness. And I tried to, and everyone's outside. It was a nice day, and just smoking and talking, and there was no place to sit down. So I ended up standing, drinking my last English pint, and ended up just sloshing back to the hotel through St. James Park. There's so much fluid in me. It was gross. But then we went out to the Royal Air Force Club for dinner and drinks, and just look it up, RAF in London. They have their own pub in the basement. So I had a fantastic dinner. I sat next to a beyond brilliant woman who works with my wife from England, and we just talked gardening and plants and animals all night. It was a great time. And then Friday morning, wake up, and I got an Uber over to the Fly Show. So I'll get to that in a moment, but some of my notes from London first. There's no ice water anywhere. I drink a lot of ice water all day long. I drink ice water. The beer's weak, nothing really over 4.2% at a pub. Everyone drinks a lot there. Everyone smokes. The cigarette butts littering the streets and outside the pubs was absolutely disgusting. Crossing streets was difficult. You have to look right, left, right again. There were no soda fountains. There were no cups with straws. There were no takeout cups. You buy a drink to go and unscrew a cap or open a can. I did like the Coke there because it didn't have corn syrup. The weather was cloudy and cool and it was dry, much drier than it was here. And of course, we got a massive rainstorm while we were there, which shut down the shad fishing for a while. The dogs were extremely well behaved. The flavored gins are amazing. I ended up picking up 2 little bottles of gin at the liquor stores, and then you're going to find out about another gin from Mixer Fox Denton when I get to the show. People have more liberty with their hairstyles as professionals. You see more people with facial piercings and colored and just different hair than you would ever find here. It's extremely less conservative. There were no buildings really in downtown London that were taller than 4 to 5 flights of stairs. They were all built before elevators. There were a lot of food options. My goals were to have Guinness and curry. And really the only Indian I ate was at Dishoom, although Hoppers had some amazing Sri Lankan curries. Look up Dishoom if you can. Follow them on Instagram. Bartenders don't want to talk to you, and there are no TVs in the pubs I went to. The children sound very intelligent, and I did not go to any grocery stores to explore food options that I could probably take home. I did end up in Soho going to Italian market and getting some really good porcini mushroom bouillon cubes. And they smelled better than the ones I can get at the Italian store here down by Ritchie. So Friday, I Uber there, and I see a doner kebab joint about 2 blocks. So I decide I'm going to eat there on my way out. So I get there. I have a great show. You walk in, and it's this giant lit atrium building with shooting sports on the top level and fly fishing on the downstairs. You walk around all these very expensive upland bird shooting stuff, and I get free saffron from the Spanish shooters, and I'm eating chorizo and wine. And then I meet Mr. Fox Denton, and I make my way downstairs, and the first thing I notice is that the booths are prefabricated. So you have this little cubby that's pre-built with a roof and 3 walls, and you set up inside of there. The casting pond was lined with plants and wooden boards and was elevated where you could cast, and there were chairs surrounding it. So you could sit down and listen to everybody talking. I listened to Charles Jardine, who I have a book from, and we may or may not hear his casting talk depending on audio quality from Jason. Everyone was dressed extremely nice, tapered clothes, shirts tucked in, starch stuff, the antithesis of an American fly fishing show where everyone looks like they sleep under bridges and are just dirty. I mean, you've seen that at fly fishing shows in America. Everyone looks homeless compared to the London show, where it's blazers and pants with your tucked into your boots, and everyone is got their hair done and they're clean shaven, and it was a complete dichotomy, antipode of an American fly fishing show. Nobody was walking around with their Yeti cups, and there were no streamer bros lurking around. It wasn't all baseball hats, old shirts, ratty work pants, flip-flops, and dirty shoes. It was an eye-opening experience for me. There was a lot of jungle cock there, a lot of flies tied for small, clear water. Vaynard had their own fly tyers row. I was very impressed with the gourmet flies, Gourmet. Not much social media for them, but you'll hear about them. I think Amy has some of the most colorful flies there. I think that she should market to Great Lakes steelhead anglers. Please follow her on Instagram. She's been catching blue rainbow trout, and some of her flies would absolutely tear it up over here in the States. The Romanians had a hat made of amadou for me to wear, and the Slovenians, which were the Slovenian booth, made the show for me. I had fun talking to everybody, but it wasn't until I got to their booth and I'm interviewing Gregor, and he won't tell me his flies. I've never seen beetle patterns like this. I asked what the cuisine is back home, and before you know it, you hear bottle of white, bottle of red, beer comes out, cheese, and homemade charcuterie and homemade bread, and it was the most fun 15 minutes I had at that show, and it made me really happy for my walk back to the kebab joint, and then a 3-mile walk back to the hotel, where we went out for a quick bite to eat, and then we saw Hamilton. We finished the show at Hamilton. My wife is a huge Hamilton fan. We were in the second row. We were getting spit on by the actor. Second row center. My wife knew every lyric, and it was absolutely brilliant. If you don't know about Hamilton, just go listen to all the songs on YouTube. My wife knew them all. So for the show, we're going to start off with Fox Denton gin. Then we're going to go to Icelandic salmon flies. We're going to learn about River D hairwing flies, gourmet flies from France and their modern techniques. Paul Monahan, who I follow on Instagram but didn't put 1 and 2 together, and I was completely embarrassed afterwards. He was tying predatory streamers. Karen, an American, tying classic salmon flies. Phil tying buzzers, and he has inspired me now to tie buzzers. Amy with her brilliantly colorful flies and her amazingly colorful fly tying area. Line recycling. We'll listen to Charles talking about casting. Anna with fishing from Romania. And then we're going to finish with Gregor and his crew from Slovenia. I only know a little bit about Slovenian fly fishing from the Phil Monahan article a couple years ago and his blog post on the Orvis site. We're going to get a little education about Slovenia, and they had some really cool stuff. So this is London and the London Fly Fishing Fair. I hope you enjoy this. Next up is going to be Pappy Van Winkle with Dan Davala. All right. Let's talk about gin. So what do we have here?
Hi, my name's Nick Radcliffe, and I'm the owner of Fox Denton Estate Company, which is a small gin maker in the UK. The company was founded in 1935 by my grandfather, to protect land that he owned, I turned it into a gin business. We primarily supply the shooting and hunting and fishing industry because in this country it's a very sociable activity and people tend to stop midway through the day and have a small shot of sloe gin or damson gin. On the stand here you can see fairly amazing photos from 1911 which show, I think, the only sturgeon caught on a rod and line. I have to say it was foul hooked by my grandfather. Sturgeon never appear here. They are technically, when they appear, the property of the king, or the queen. So when he caught it, he presented it to George V, who returned it and suggested he put it in his museum. It was stuffed, and eventually my grandfather gave it to the local county museum. So if you go to the Dorchester County Museum, you can see this 203-pound, 9-foot-long sturgeon. I think the only time it's been caught on a rod and line in the UK.
Wow. That thing is huge.
It is huge, isn't it? Shall I tell you how he first tried to do it? When it first appeared, they had no fishing tackle. It was next to a farm which he owned. And he called the farmer, got his shotgun, and tried to give it 2 barrels of number 5 shot. It had no effect whatsoever. Fish disappeared. 2 months later, it appeared in another pool in the same river. That's when he could send for his big salmon. He said, I sent for my biggest rod and the largest salmon flies I could find. And he rigged it up and eventually, by casting over it, managed to foul hook it. And it took 1 hour and 40 minutes to bring it in. And there were 2 of them.
And it's on top of a car.
It is. That car is the family Daimler. I think they were fairly popular big cars in those days, and you can see it's the length of the whole roof. In fact, if you want to see something really amazing, he was very pompous, my grandfather. There's the family crest painted on the door.
Very cool. So tell me about sloe berries. It's not something we have.
No, it isn't, because they are the fruit of the blackthorn tree. Now, the blackthorn tree is a tree you don't have in North America. It's very popular in this country because it's very spiny and it makes a great hedgerow for stopping cattle or stock moving from one field to another. And in the 18th century, when we started the process of enclosing common land, it was often planted as part of a hedgerow. It grows and produces a very small black bitter fruit called the sloe berry. They're almost impossible to eat. They're full of tannin. But if you put them in gin and add sugar, shake it every day for a week, every week for a month, after 3 months, the flavour and colour in the sloe goes into the gin and the sugar makes it palatable, and you end up with what is probably the most iconic drink for shooting or hunting in the UK. But seriously, every single driven shoot you ever go on, every rough shoot, someone somewhere will have a bottle of either sloe gin, damson gin. In fact, I've been a judge. The Field magazine, which is our sort of stream and field that you have in America, the Field magazine here runs a competition every year for the best homemade. And I've been the judge along with the editor. And you get all sorts. You get every berry, every fruit is tried. Because it's very easy. You just get a big kiln jar, put the fruit in, put your spirit, whether it's gin or vodka, whiskey, lock the lid, shake it, add some sugar, shake it, leave it. It takes about 3 to 6 months, and at the end of it, you have a homemade liqueur. It's really, really popular in this country. I would say, if you walk up and down here and ask people on various stands, do you make your own sloe gin? I bet 70% will say, I have done. They don't always, because they tend to buy mine, but nearly everybody has done it.
Fantastic. All right, well, have a good show, and thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
So you are Skuli?
Yes, I'm Skuli Kristján from Iceland. I'm salmon fly tyer and guide.
And tell me about the flies you tied here. You said they're hairwing?
They're hairwing and featherwings, and they're made for Iceland in clear water, so most of them are very small. And down to number 18 or 20 treble hooks in clear water.
What is the purpose of the treble hook? Just to stick them better?
They hold better and they swim very well in water. Very steady. If you have a double hook, he will go on the sides, single hooks, so sometimes treble hooks swims very strict, straight in the water.
Particular feathers or hair you're using to tie these?
I use a lot of Icelandic horsehair, we call it marketing on Arctic Runner, which is very good for small flies. And then a little bit of fox, and then feather wings. I'm using all kinds of feather, from the ducks and the goose that I hunt myself up to speckled bustard and feathers were hard to get. And many of my flies are a mixture of old and new style. And the main reason for the small salmon flies are the clear waters and small rivers. You don't disturb the pools if you are fishing on small fly. If you put a big tube in it, it will spoil the fishing.
All right. How's the show going so far?
Good so far. It's just started, but
right.
Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So the River Dee. Where's the River Dee, and tell me about it?
Well, the River Dee's in Aberdeenshire in the northeast of Scotland. It's one of the big 4 salmon rivers in Scotland. 90 miles of superb fly fishing from the Cairngorm Mountains all the way to Aberdeen.
And what are the seasons, and what do you guys do to catch fish up there? How would it be different than other rivers?
Well, the season starts early. We're starting 1st of February, so we call that spring season, but you can imagine it's actually very cold then, cold and snowy. And at that time of the year, we chase after the fish. We use sunken lines and weighted tube flies. Yeah, early season the weather can be challenging. You know, we'll get snow, wind and rain. In fact, on the opening day of the season, we couldn't fish because the river was full of snow and ice. But that's part of the charm of fishing for spring salmon, is combating the elements.
So if this is water that you normally get to fish, do you have bucket list destinations you want to fish? I mean, you're on probably one of the most famous rivers in the world.
Bucket list for me? Oh my goodness, now that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, places like the Alta, that would be definitely one of mine. I'd love to come and fish in the States as well. You know, there's a lot of Atlantic salmon on the East Coast as well. So, yeah, I'd love to try it. Definitely on the bucket list there.
What flies do you guys tie up there? Traditional, classic, or sort of new, modern?
Well, these days, most salmon flies are hair-wing salmon flies of some type. The old classic flies are still in use. Some people still fish them, but generally speaking, it would be hair-wing tubes. So early season flies would be the Willie Gun, which is a really famous Scottish pattern, and a black and yellow. And these are bucktail tubes. They're metal tubes with bucktail just tied all around it, and that's the main ones. And then the other flies that we fish early season is something called the D Monkey, which is a black and yellow fly with a long black wing. There's probably our 3 main early season flies. But once we pass February and March and into April, the river starts to warm up. The water clears, and we've quite a shallow river, so we've got shallow, clear, crystal clear water, and we use some of these types of flies that you can see here, just small, black and silver, black silver with a touch of blue. These are real typical D colours for clear water in the late spring and summer months.
Tell me about some of these materials you've got laid out here. There's some kind of animal's face.
Yeah, we've got a bit of everything here. That's actually fox mask you're seeing there. The other stuff we've got, there's goat hair, pony hair. This is a cock hackle, just hen, and this is a hen hackle. It's slightly different structure. And we've got various bits of flash material on that, as you can see as well. We just put some of these in just to give the fly a little glint. Not too much, but just a little glint.
What is this tube apparatus vise you're using? I've never seen one of these.
This is a Vision fly tying vise, and this particular attachment on it here, the needle is for tying tube flies. So I'll just, if I can see what I'm doing. You see that the tube slides onto the vise there like that, and you just tie away like that. And this style of fly, we fish it, we slide it up our leader, then we tie a hook onto the knot, and that just butts up against the hook. It's just a tube fly. The other types are more orthodox dressed flies you'll be familiar with.
Fantastic. All right. Anything else we should know about the D?
Come and see us. The River Dee's fishing is available to everybody. Check out www.fishdee.co.uk. Gives you all the latest availability, catches, river levels, where to stay, how to get there, everything you need to know for a trip to Deeside.
Fantastic. Thanks so much.
It's a pleasure.
My name is Stan. I'm from France, and I specialize in the production of translucent fishing flies with a company called Gourmet Flies. So I aim to do only translucent flies because they are more catchy. in France, we have very educated fish, and we fish for crystal clear waters, so we had to adapt. And we had to push the realism above classic flies. That's why we designed translucent fishing flies. So I mainly work with glass beds and UV varnish, so it's like modern technical tying. I use old and new materials to create more realistic flies. That's the point.
And you said they're a hybrid between a streamer and a nymph?
Yeah. So this is the streamer of the collection, because the collection is made of small mayflies, caddisflies, and streamers. And this small streamer is a mix of rabbit for the tail and glass beds for the body, and it's making a mix of translucent and rabbit hair. It's like a small minnow. Small minnows are translucent-like, so it's really catchy. And I fish them on a dead drift, like a small dead fish, but like a nymph. So when the trouts see this larval streamer, it's like a nymph, a small dead fish, damsel. You don't know what it's incitative, you know.
There's some very unique looking flies.
Thank you.
So this little minnow one right here I picked up. Tell me about that one.
So this one is the sculpin. So same concept as the other streamers, but I have 3 colors. So the brown one will be a small sculpin. The classic one you found in fresh rivers. The gray one will be like a bleak, more in lakes. And the green one, of course, will be like the classic minnow. So you have to fish according to the place. Like in rivers, it will be like sculpin and minnow. And more in lakes, like a whitefish, the gray one.
And what is the cure you're using to put on them? The clear?
So, to be honest with you, the cure has no point for me. I use Solares, but all of them are good, because what's important is to use the good UV light, to have a good polymerization.
You have the Solares rechargeable?
I used it, but I use super strong UV light to polymerize all kind of resin, of all kind of cure. Because I do it in a professional way. So every day I have to polymerize loads of flies with a big professional UV light.
Okay. So what are some of the rivers you're fishing in France?
So I live in the northeast of France, and I'm lucky because we have the most crystal clear waters in France, and we do a lot of site nymphing. So it's rivers like the Loup, the Ain River, the Moselle rivers. All of them are really clear, calcareous, like chalk streams, and you can spot a lot of big grainings and trout. Hence, the translucent flies, we need realistic flies there.
What is the little one you're tying now?
So
that's a tiny little bead.
Oh yeah, that's a tiny one, and it comes from a New Zealand ID, because some anglers were asking me, I need tiny flies, but with strong hooks and a big ring on the front for strong tippet, you know?
Okay, yeah.
So I designed what I call the anorexic perdigon, because you see the hook is oversized and the mayfly is tiny. Then you can hook big trouts and use big tippet on it. So that's the concept. It's anorexic. A small fly on a strong hook. That's the concept.
Very clever fly tying.
Thank you.
Where can we find you online? You said at Gourmet Flies?
So the company is called Gourmet Flies, because we are gourmet and fish are gourmet. It's easy, www.gourmetflies.com, and it's made in France and shipped worldwide.
Merci.
No problem.
All right, so Paul Monahan.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. So tell us about what you're tying right now.
So I'm tying a bulkhead, one of Polvik's patterns, but we're sort of modernising it with a dragon tail. So the dragon tails are made by quite a famous Italian fly fisher, and they're really taken off in the UK.
Is it vinyl? What are they made out of?
It's a good question. I don't think anybody really knows. I think it's some sort of lurex or spandex material, but they're quite robust to pike's teeth, because that's what I primarily tie, is pike flies. So it's a very, very good pattern for if you need to create a bit of movement and a lot of disturbance in the water for pike, especially in coloured water.
Do you have colour preference to fish in dirtier water?
Yeah, I tend to go for the chartreuse and orange colours, or black flies, for dirty water. When it's clear, more natural patterns. in sort of roach colours or perch colours. So, the olives, the whites and silvers and greys, they tend to work better, and a little bit less flash as well.
What are your rat flies made out of?
That's Arctic fox. Arctic or blue fox. They're articulated patterns with deer hair heads. So they take a bit of time. So the articulation's based off the Blaine chocolate game changer. I'm sure you've heard of Blaine.
Yep.
Pretty well known in America.
I know Blaine.
Oh yeah. Ties are cracking Tide game changers, and they're starting to take off in the UK as well. Well, they take forever to tie, but it's all fun, isn't it?
Do you have a preference for hooks for these big toothy critters?
Yes, I tend to use Arex hooks. Arex trap predators 4.0s and larger sizes. I like my hooks with a heavy wire gauge, just to make sure that they're strong enough. You never know what you're going to hook into. It could be that big mama.
And what is the monofilament that you're tying on right now?
Yeah, so for my tail attachments, I don't tend to use wire because I don't use stinger hooks. So I use 60-pound monofilament. Doesn't matter what brand, as long as it's stiff and holds that tail away from the hook. That's the main thing, and they're pretty tooth resisting as well. As I said, there's no stingers on the back of these, so we're safe to use them.
Yeah. Is there a legality issue here with articulated and having more than one hook?
No, not at all. No, a lot of the fly ties, the pike flies, tend to stick to single hooks, maybe articulated with two hooks. We don't use trebles like the lure guys do on their lures, on the soft plastics or whatever.
What are you using to wrap that with?
This is GSP 100.
Oh, you're getting close to the end of it.
Yeah. Well, I always I'm lazy. I have a big spool of it, which I buy it in bulk, so I get through it pretty quickly.
Do you have social media where people can look at your flies?
Yeah. Well, I've got a YouTube channel. YouTube is if you just search Paul Monaghan in YouTube, and you'll get plenty of tutorials on pike flies and zander flies and big trout streamers as well.
Tell me about a zander. What's a zander?
It's like your walleye.
Okay.
Very similar fish. They're found in quite a few of the rivers in the UK, and also the big reservoirs in the Midlands. Typically a deep water fish, but we fish for them on sunk lines. 4 to 6 inch flies. They're quite a challenge to catch, but they're good fun.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, Paul. Well, thank you for telling us about your tying today.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for the conversation.
All right, Linda, tell me about the flies you're tying.
The flies that I'm tying are classic Atlantic salmon flies for the most part. They're either classic traditional patterns from the 17 and 1800s, or they're more modern tires, but they're all that certain style that we look at as classics. And today I'm working on one called the Major, and it's a fly by Toll-Free, so it's a Norwegian fly.
What are the materials going into this one?
It has a dubbed body, so it's got some seal's fur in the body, 4 different colors, some tinsels, guinea and bustard for the throats, and then it has a snipe feather. That's the unique thing about the Major fly.
How long does it take to tie one of these?
It's probably 4 or 5 hours. Yeah, so
maybe
it's
1 to 2
longer.
flies today?
Yeah, it's a little longer than a trout fly. Yeah.
How did you go about coming to the show here on the other side of the world from you?
We had the Atlantic Salmon Fly International in Seattle. It's a show that our club put on, and we invited a lot of the international salmon tyers, and so I've gotten to know some of them and then just been invited, and it seems like one thing leads to another, and you meet so many great people.
Yeah. How many years have you been here?
This is my second at the London Fly Fair.
And are you seeing anything else while you're in London?
I'll spend a few days sightseeing. That's what I do every time I come over. So I'm going to go over to Greenwich later.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Where can people purchase these or see your fly tying?
I'm on Facebook, so they can catch me there. And I'm at various shows in the U.S. or some of them in the UK, Ireland, Scotland. I'll be at the German show, too.
Did you start off tying these, or did this progress into, were you tying like woolly buggers, or like everyone else started with, and then progressed into the classic patterns?
I didn't start with anything smaller. I was always invited by my husband to tie classic salmon flies and come to the meetings. in our club, and I just never got involved in it until I'd been to a couple shows. So I started right away with these, and struggled for a whole year and did things over and over. And it got to be frustrating. You could come home and he'd say, "Oh, that doesn't look so hot. Let's take it off after dinner and start all over." So, I think just having somebody there to look and tell you that it's right or wrong, really helps speed it up. So I've been tying about 4.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
These are spectacularly amazing.
Thank you.
So these are all designed by other people, the original patterns. Mm-hmm. Are there color motifs in them, or are they just they just came up with it as they went, and now it's a standard that's named after them?
There are certain flies have certain colors, and certain people who designed them have used certain colors for the rivers that they fished them on originally. And then others, like the more artistic ones, like the Indian Summer by Paul Schmuckler, those are more freestyle in their color.
Fantastic. All right, well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, Amy, your station is very colorful. Do you want to talk about your setup and what you're tying?
Yep, very colourful as always. Pink, purple. I think when you're a female in the industry, you have to bring all the colour to it. So I've got my purple regal, my pink scissors, and ready to tie some flies.
So all of your flies seem to be very colourful except your stone fly. Do you not tie a pink one?
Well, I'm getting on to pink later on, but I might give a pink stonefly a go, really. It's not a bad idea.
Where's home for you?
Lancashire, so England, Lancashire. It's about 4 hours from here, so it's quite nice. We've got some nice rivers, some nice still waters. It's pretty cool.
All right. And you do all nymphs, or there's a couple dries in there? Do you have a preference to what you tie?
I'll tie pretty much most things, whatever's sort of working for me at the time. What I've brought with me today is just a very small selection. I've got fly boxes full of hundreds and hundreds of flies, and sometimes you just have to be a little bit selective of what you bring with you. So I've just got a little range, really. Some emergers, some dries, nymphs, some shrimps, like some little squirmy.
What are those? So you got the little squirmy built in with something around it?
Yeah, so it's a case caddis, but with a squirmy instead.
I've never seen that before.
No, it's I think it's something I came across on YouTube, really. Someone had done it with chartreuse chenille, and I thought, oh, why can't we whack a bit of squirmy worm in there? River trout love a bit of squirmy.
Fantastic.
So.
And I imagine these are very easy to see from far away.
Oh, yes.
What is the cider on those dries made from? The parachute.
Oh, the parachute. So it's from polypropylene yarn. That particular pink colour is from Belgium. So I know I have a friend out there, and he sends me it across every now and then, so it's just super fun.
Phil's got his connection for tails, and you've got your connection for parachutes.
Yep.
All right. Is there social media where we can look at your flies?
Yeah, really well. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Amy Kitchen Fishing. Yeah, you'll find me on there.
And Amy is spelled A-M-I.
A-I-M-E-E.
Yeah. Not the way we would spell it, but it makes a difference.
No, it's French. I'm not that I'm French, but it's a French spelling. So.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thanks so much.
Do that. So.
All right. Are you Viv?
I am.
Yeah. All right, Viv, tell me about your project.
We are the Anglers National Line Recycling Scheme, which we launched over here in the UK in March 2018. What we do, we collect fishing lines, so monofilament, backing and braid, and also now fly lines. We've got about 250 shops around the UK that have signed up, so they have a recycling bin in store. So any angler can go into the shop, take in their old fishing line, fly lines, that sort of stuff, drop it in the bin, then it's sent back to us and we get it recycled. We're working with a UK recycler that's using the fly lines to make plastic board out of that. The monofilament's going off to a company in Denmark, which they're turning into things like wetsuits and traffic cones, skateboards, all that sort of stuff. And hopefully, once we get the volume, we've collected about 2 million metres in the last year of monofilament. We're going to start looking at creating an angling product. So whether it's sunglass frames, could be maggot boxes for anglers or disgorgers to unhook fish with, something like that. So ultimately we want the fishing line to end up being another angling product that can be again recycled at the end of its life. So we're totally volunteer led, right? We're not a business, right? We're doing it all as volunteers. We were funded from donations from sponsors, so Orvis, who we're here with today, they're supporting the scheme. We've got a lot of the coarse fishing, like the carp fishing world as well. They're donating a few £100s a year to help us run the scheme, donating tackle prizes for raffles, things like that. So it's a non-profit organisation, will always be like that. It's just hopefully putting angling in a good light, really, in terms of doing the right thing environmentally, because we love where we go fishing. So it's our role partly to look after the environment where we spend so much of our time chasing our dreams, really.
Where can people in the States donate? Have you expanded yet?
No, I think there's already some form of recycling in the States in terms of, I think Berkeley do a program over there. I'm not too sure. I think this mainly, they have bins on the jetties and the piers when you come in from your days fishing with the boat. It's something we're looking at expanding into Europe. We're off to Brussels in June to the big trade show there, and hopefully we're going to expand into Europe. And we're also chatting with Pure Fishing in the UK as well. So hopefully, who knows where this could be in a year, 2 years time. We might expand it right across the globe. Really, it would be fantastic. Which we're only 2 volunteers run it at the moment, so we'll probably need to go full time and do something there with it. But it's a scheme that pretty much any angler, no matter whether you fish for carp, for bass, for trout, for salmon, we can all agree on that we need to recycle what we use. So it's probably the first thing or first scheme that I know of in angling, especially in the UK, that every angler could agree on. We don't agree as anglers in terms of carp anglers never agree with trout anglers. We're not interested in the same things, but something like this, now that we can do fly lines and everything, I think we've probably got a scheme that everyone can get behind, and it's the right thing to do. You can't argue against recycling and certainly not leaving redundant fishing line in the environment with wildlife and stuff like that, because the general public how they perceive anglers can change very quickly. If we start having wildlife getting caught up in fishing line and stuff like that, that will get more press than all the good we do as anglers in terms of looking after the rivers and the habitat and stuff like that. One swan or a wildfowl caught up in a bit of fishing line will get more press than we would ever do there. So I think we've got to be very proactive as a sport in terms of portraying angling as people that really care and look after the environment that we use. As much as we're working with a group down in the southwest of England now, and they do beach clean, so they collect plastics. So they're now sending us their old plastics they pick up off the beach. So we're helping groups outside of angling to get rid of their plastics that are found on the beach, right? So that people, like swimmers or people going to the beach for a holiday, they're leaving plastics there. We're helping to clean that up as well. So we're going beyond angling, which I think is only good for us as a sport and our image, really. So it's exciting times, very exciting times.
Viv, where can we find you online?
We've got a website. It's anglers-NLRS, so National Line Recycling Scheme.co.uk. If you go onto the website, there's loads of information about what we do here in the UK, but also we've got shops signing up across Europe now, and we welcome emails from anywhere in the world, really. If we can roll the scheme out across many countries, then as anglers across the world we can make a difference. So visit the website, drop us an email, and we can certainly work on things from there. So
thank you so much.
Brilliant, pleasure. Thanks, Rob. Cheers.
London. There's the thing. Who would have thought? Fly fishing in London. Right, now I'm going to do the first thing I'm going to do is going to scare the living daylights out of Hal. Because I'm going to do this, because I will. Now, he's going to get really worried. And you can check out, I haven't got any holes in my socks here. And security's lurking, but There is a reason for doing this, because I want to dance about a bit. Now, the idea of this particular little demonstration, and Hal's having a wonderful time with this automatic fly reel, and I do actually need that rod in a bit, but is where we came from, or where I came from as fly fishing. And it's really important to see and chart the changes of how we mould into the styles and the materials that we use today, and how that they got to where they did, and why they got to where they have done. And who's to say where they're going to go in the future? Now, all of us are aware that we're using modern technology, we're using actually solid carbon that has been actually created from the rocket race, the rocket industry. And one or two of you will have walked around here and there would have been the odd artisan rod maker. And life was very, very different when I grew up. Some would argue I've never grown up. But when I started fly fishing at the tender age of about 4 or 5, we were using these sort of things here. Wood. Not just any wood. Bamboo, split cane. That was hand-planed into sections, resin together, bound together, set, and planed into an action that the actual rod builder wanted me to use. Now, the height of that was arguably the CC de France when I grew up. I always lusted after a CC de France, and this is a facsimile. And does it still cast today? Well, I put on it, you won't be able to see this, a silk fly line. And again, that was de rigueur when I grew up, a silk fly line. They were plaited, brought together, needed us to invest care and attention into the material. And this is a modern one, it's a phoenix silk fly line. And the action that one had was very much, and this is really where I want to explore for the next 20 minutes or so, the actions in which we adopt to meet the needs of the materials that we use. So, I was taught by my father, with a rod not dissimilar to this, that you had the rod low, and you imagined that you had a ball of mud on the end of the rod tip. And that ball of mud needed to be flicked off on the vertical above me there. To make matters even worse, my father got me to have a book under the arm because he'd read somewhere that this was the way to go. You had to keep the elbow in and you had to imagine that ball. Now this is a 4 or 5-year-old kid trying to compute all this, and it's tricky, I've got to tell you. Oh, he's done it, oh bless you. Don't press the handle. No, that should be a metaphor for my life, actually. Do not press the handle. Anyway, so here I am, book under my arm, ball of mud, imaginary, on the end of the rod tip, and I'm going, right, I've got to flick it off behind me. Now, my father hasn't told me what to do after that, so we're just dealing with one thing at a time. There. Now what, Dad? Ah, right, well now it's still on there, you flick it forward. Right, okay, no, not quite like that. Now, so here we are. So I developed an early style, and stop me if some of you haven't seen this kind of style before, of elbow here, clutched in here, and you end up with a sort of a lilt, like here, and you're trying to flick this ball of mud, and repeatedly doing it. No wonder I didn't catch any bloody trout to start with. They were all, I was fishing in Kent, they were all in Essex. So I suddenly thought, well, it's got to be easier than that. Then I realised that line with that rod started to do stuff once it went through the air. So I went out in the garden, I practiced, and I thought, right, okay, so I know it's got to climb to the vertical. And I know if I push it out like that, it can work. So I need to flow behind me, I need to push it out with that rod tip. Great, it's working. Now, the big change came, for me, with the transformation of this material into the next one I'm using. But even when I go to the next material, that old tagline of, it's got an action like cane persisted. Now, I don't know, and I don't suppose there's anyone in this room that could actually define or tell me what the action of cane is supposed to be, because out in Europe, there was a wonderful man called Hans Gebetsreuser. Coming up, he was a river keeper on the River Traun and used to look after the crown heads of Europe and all the rest of it. And he came up with a style with split cane, with short rods made by Brunner in Germany, Austria, Germany, thereabouts, that came through the air like that. And he got the whole of the fly line. You have to dress these fly lines, which means anoint them with floating. At the end of a period, your clients were having lunch over there. You'd go out, you'd have to redress the fly lines. And he ended up going, well, if I do that and that line's going to go out, so I can go out and redress it. What he didn't know was he started to craft a thing called the oval style, or the Germanic style. I'm going to move this behind me. That wire is getting on my nerves, so I'm just going to change across here.
Your name is?
I'm Smaranda.
And you're from Romania.
I'm from Romania.
So first off, let's talk about the amadou you have here. There's a hat made out of amadou.
Yeah.
Usually, I've never seen that before.
Yeah, it's a special hat made by our local traditional craftsmen there, who go 3 times a year and pick all the horseshoe fungus they find and then produce it further in their own way.
Are people kind of hesitant to show others where they access this from? Like,
No.
are you very guarding your hunting grounds?
No. They're walking through forests, and actually they need to find old forests, And in Romania, thank God, we still have virgin forests with the old trees, and you can find the most of the best, the most of the horseshoe fungus exemplars on old birch trees.
Birch trees.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you like people around the world to know about fly fishing in Romania?
Well, if they are nature lovers, if they like chasing a legend, if they like to be on an adventure, then Romania is the best destination for them. Fishing there, it's returning back to nature, actually. If you go for trophies, okay, you can go also for trophies, but in the whole Carpathians, it's such a beautiful nature and small stream fishing in remote places and just being by yourself and, again, with nature. That's perfect. And if you'd like to combine it with bear watching or just with trekking or a little bit of a cultural sightseeing, Romania offers it all,
Are there specific flies that are local to Romania that others wouldn't know about?
Not that I know. No. We are not that traditional in fly fishing as a country. It's still pretty young as a sport. But the locals used to fly with wet flies. Don't ask me the name of it, but wet flies was the traditional way of fly fishing there. And since a few years now, they're more specialized in dry fly fishing because of the conditions.
Is there a season to fishing?
Yes, of course. If you go in the mountains, then you have to search for the trout season in Romania, and it is starting with May until the middle of September.
And when one goes to Romania, is there a certain cuisine we should be looking for? Is there a famous food?
The traditional food is always welcome. We have rolled cabbage, dumplings, everything actually that also Europe has, but with our own recipes. So just come and grab one and let yourself, not only inspired, but how do you call it? Just let yourself served and enjoy the time there. It's a perfect destination also regarding meals, I think. We eat good. Now, I've been in a lot of places all over, maybe in the US not, but the Romanian cuisine, it's gorgeous. You eat good, You eat really good.
Fantastic.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Where are you from, Rob?
Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C.
Yeah, we have a very famous Slovenian at the
You're a hunter?
Just fish. All right, so Gregor, tell me, you are from
Slovenia.
And you're at the fly fishing show, and you've got some pretty unique flies here.
Well, that's something, yeah. A little bit also unique things.
Tell me about the balsa wood fly. The cherry?
Yeah, like a cherry pattern for bass or for a chub. We use it in Europe for a chub fishing.
And you have a secret beetle pattern you won't tell me about.
Yeah, well, you can't know everything you want.
So what is fishing like in Slovenia? What species of trout?
We fish for marble trout. That's quite a unique thing in Europe. We fish for brownie, grayling, and rainbows, of course. Most of it is like side fishing, nymphing or dry fly fishing. Alpine creeks, crystal clear. Have a couple of chuck streams. That's it.
Okay. And you're mostly imitating mayflies, stoneflies?
Mayflies, stoneflies, caddises, gammarus shrimps, and also some this artificial, how would I say it? Trouts like, especially rainbows, like some shiny, sparkling things.
Mm-hmm. Did you tie all of these?
Let me say it like 80% of that.
Wow.
Yeah, something like that.
Do you have a favorite material to tie with?
Yeah, Cool de Canard, CDC, and hare's ear dubbing. That's my... Because in Slovenia we have like quite huge hatch of caddies, and then it's just about sky's the limit of the colors and sizes of the flies.
So if a listener wants to come and fish with you, how could they get a hold of you?
They can find us on our website, email, and that's it,
Okay. And if we're going to Slovenia, what's the first thing we should eat and drink? What are you famous for? The food.
What is Slovenia famous for?
Yeah.
Nice people.
Food.
That too.
Food.
Yeah. What's a good Slovenian dish?
Potica,
A sort of
kremšnita. We cannot translate because anywhere
Cream
in
cake.
the world you cannot find similar stuff. But it's sweet. Potica we eat generally on holidays.
Sweet cake, walnut cake. No,
But it's not like a cake. It's different. No, it's like a dough, and then we put the walnuts and
wines,
sugar.
well known.
I see you guys are starting off early here today.
Well, it's not so early anymore.
Yeah.
It's like almost 2 p.m.
It's getting late.
We
You
love
wanna- you-
people.
you
We
wanna
love
drink
to
beer?
hang out. We are very communicative.
Are you for beer? Are you for beer?
Would you like some beer?
Oh, beer? I'll try some.
Oh, Slovenian.
Yeah, just a little bit. I gotta walk 3 miles now. So what else? Tell me more about.
Just give me a second. I have. Sorry.
If you want, you ask if you like a glass of wine, you can also get a
All
glass
right.
of wine.
I guess I'm gonna start drinking
we have
now.
Fantastic Slovenian wines also here. So white or
The whole thing for me?
Of course.
Oh my gosh.
Don't be pussy.
Oh my.
or you maybe can taste a glass of wine. Demușen glass
The cheese?
Yes, it's homemade. He is producer.
farm in Salami.
That's such a region.
Gosh, a little piece of cheese.
Would you like a glass of red wine maybe or white
Sure.
wine?
I need to try some bread.
Red.
English.
Now you're done, buddy.
Oh my god.
First you will taste...
My hands are so full. This is great.
Demo to give.
Oh my gosh.
First you will taste a glass of wine, then we'll give you a glass of red.
Now you see what Slovenia is famous in food about.
This is the best booth here.
What?
Told you before.
Oh my gosh. So tell me about the salami.
He is producer.
I make them. Yeah, no, we won't tell all. We just put in salt, 2.8% of salt, a little bit of pepper, wine, and garlic in wine, and then we cut.
Pork.
Yeah, pork, only pork. We eat pork. We in Slovenia we love pork, a little obsessed maybe, and we cut this fat on hand, and then we make salamis, and we cure them for 3-4 months.
That's Chardonnay. Chardonnay, which is produced in the wine region of Goriška Brda, which is on the Italian border. That's one of the best Slovenian region for making beautiful white and red dry wines.
like Chardonnay, Pinot Blanc, Pinot Grigio. And also the second one you will taste here, it will be Merlot Cabernet Franc. It's from the same region.
Okay.
You will see.
Let me try another piece of the cheese. And do you make the cheese yourself as well?
This is from mountain cheese. Milk doesn't have any, additives to get, cows don't have any additives to get more milk, just flours, and it's full fat. Maybe, we say if you eat too much, you have troubles, No, with Potenza. We're joking. I don't know, I didn't know what
This is
to
also
say.
Slovenian. Pear and honey. Schnapps.
Wow.
So try. And I think everything what happened now in this minute answer your question. What are we famous for?
Oh my goodness. This is more than just fly fishing. This is, you guys do hospitality.
Yeah, we do.
Now we drink.
I feel Slovenia with love. There you go.
Yeah.
All right, now we're going to go to a red.
Touristic brand. And the best fly fishing in Slovenia is with Dreamfly Outfitter.
Okay. Tell me more about marble trout.
Unique species, lives only in Socha River and their tributaries. Looks like, let me say for Americans, like a tiger trout, but green color.
All right.
Can grow up to 1 yard or more. That's the biggest trout can grow in the world, I think so.
And are they related to taimen?
No.
No?
No, it's not. It's a trout. The European taimen is hucho hucho. We also have it in Slovenia, but that's in Danube river and tributaries. That's on the other side because Socha river is floating into the Adriatic Sea and Danube is going to the Black Sea, and they are not separated together. It's a little bit different on the different valleys. Socha Valley is close almost on the Italian border.
You guys are too much.
You're done now, guys.
Yeah, this is going to make my walk back much easier. I need to get a photo with everyone, too.
So now think it over. We are visiting here, England. What would it be like if you visit us?
I'm going to have to bring some of our food, but I might have to make a trip now.
We don't eat hamburgers and all this stuff, like you have it.
You guys eat real food, not processed.
Exactly.
Those beetles are so cool looking.
Special show price,
Yeah, what's this one? A dragonfly nymph?
Sort of it, yeah, but without the tail, it's a little bit artificial,
woven? Yeah, these are just so cool looking.
You like it?
It almost looks like a fingernail. Oh no, you guys are too kind. Thank you. All right, anything else before I sign off?
You're always welcome in Slovenia.
This stuff is the best because it's coming only second year, Example, last year you don't come, this year to start it,
Is that a specific beetle?
This is the, kako se mu reče, not mayfly, but maybug.
Okay.
This is the maybug, and this maybug it's coming only second year. You understand? This year it's coming. Next year no. Again it's 2021.
And the fish no.
This year yes, because it's the last.
See them, the fish go nuts.
2018 it's not coming up. You don't. But it's coming a second year. You understand me? What I'm talking.
Biannual.
Yeah, this is really specific because it's I don't know why. Sorry for this. Really, I don't know. This is the nature, This is the nature, and nature it's amazing,
All right, let's get a group photo together then. All right, and your website?
Okay, photo will cost you, That was for free, but that's I'm joking.
Okay, what's your website? Govic.
www.govic.si.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This has been fantastic, Gregor.
Thank you for joining us for the Fly Fishing Consultant Podcast. For more information or to contact Rob, please go to www.robsnowhite.com.
This podcast is brought to you by Freestone Productions at freestoneproductions.com.